Hey there folks, shooting again at sunset. We had a lovely day with a short rainstorm for maybe half an hour and then blue skies, and it turns out to be a very nice sunset as well. So I figured I haven't done any updates on the garden in almost a month, and I thought to do a quick sunset rundown in the garden without many details on any of the crops or the beds, but just to kind of share where we stand at the maybe 12th of June. So long-time viewers will probably be familiar with our garden. We have two rows of beds going down the slope. Each of them is on contour and slightly raised, so no water is lost when it rains. The main pathway runs in the middle, and I'll just quickly go down here and talk for a second about each of the beds. So the first two beds on the right, on the left, are flower beds, and these flowers in late summer. And here we plant early summer flowers, and some of them are perennial, such as those. And we are in the process of planting flower starts here, and this will flower in maybe a few weeks. This is our herb propagation bed, and we have a collection of many herbs here, maybe 15 different herbs. And additionally, I'm growing here our red beets for seed this year. And we have some Henomeles or Japanese queen seedlings here, among other things. And our massive fennel, some volunteer valeriana plants, and lots of wild strawberries as a ground cover. On the other side is our lettuce growing and seed growing bed. All of those lettuces will be harvested, and some of them, such as those red sails, will be left to flower, so we have some for next year. Here some kale was planted yesterday, but most of it was eaten by the snails because I forgot to set the snail traps. This is a cover crop bed which still hasn't been processed, and the next one as well. This is the cherry tomato. We're trialing this structure with a twine method this year. You can see that almost all of the mold grass mulch here has been eaten in just a couple of weeks, and the cherries are now beginning to form fruit and flower. We'll have to still reapply mulch. Some of the volunteer borage has been allowed to grow here, as well as some weeds. But this is basically the best looking bed, the best state of any of the beds we ever get. Then down here, the smaller tomatoes, those are canning tomatoes, so we need those to grow later in the season. So they started later, and they're still smaller. No rush. The next bed is also tomatoes. This is a sour tomato, slicing tomato, I think it's called. It also started to flower, a couple of the plants. All of them were mulched with our new lawnmower collected clippings. And this is the final slicing tomato bed. All of those plants are different varieties, so maybe about 15 varieties in those beds. And red Russian kale left to grow for seed because we need more seed out of those. Here we have a dwarfing pea, which is now starting to flower. Some leftover beets, which seem to have settled. The orange, which have been harvested many times now. And some volunteer growing Swiss chard and lettuce from seed, and lots of cosmos flowers here as well. Down here we have a horseradish, which I failed to eradicate, even though I dug the 50-centimeter deep hole. It resprouted, so my respects for that. And some very hot chili peppers here. On the other side of the fence is I think it's called scarlet beans in English, but it's special variety we grow in Bulgaria, like a land race variety. Then we have a bed which we are now prepping. Last year this was vacant, so it overgrew, and all of those pieces you see are couch grass or crabgrass, so lots of work here to be done. Then the 5 potato beds, each of those is an experiment in some way. How many potatoes, how dense they're planted, what type of potato, was there a cover crop or there wasn't, how many weeding, was there mulch, was there winter rye before or not. And then those are both seed. The other 3 beds were our own seed and a mix of different varieties. Then it's the garlic. Then is the zucchini bed. We have 5 zucchini plants planted here and growing. One of them is started to set fruit now. Some volunteer sunflowers, some volunteer tomatoes, which we'll probably try to grow trailing on the ground in a type of a ground cover of sorts. And some volunteer cosmos and zinnias, which will allow to grow along with the zucchini. This here is the failed carrot bed. We had very nice germination in one section of the bed, but in the other part it turned out that some wild meadow ants have made 2 massive ant hills, so most of the seed here was eaten, and we started interplanting some onions from seed and some eggplants. Then is the garlic and the strawberries, which suffer from type of fungal disease, but I'm not doing anything and just let them recover. This is one of the newly planted peppers and some celery, more peppers which I just planted before shooting this video, and some onion from seed on the side. This is about to become a second strawberry bed, but currently it's just a few strawberries and many beets. Sadly, some burrowing animal seems to disapprove of our beet planting, and it's slowly pushing out most of the plants, and all of the empty spots which you see here are plants which died after being pushed out. I tried to return and rewater those plants when possible and push them down and compress the soil, but this dude is just relentless. So we'll probably just turn that into strawberries come August when it's time to propagate. Delicious strawberries. This is the leek bed, and even though the leek starts are tiny, they seem to do well. Maybe less than 10% failed, and we have extra plants. This is the raspberry bed. A bumblebee is still at work, although, come on, focus. Although all of the honeybees are now gone home. So they are flowering and setting nice fruit. I'm very pleased this year, even though we let the bed grow kind of wild last year and no maintenance was done. And the ground cover of wild strawberries has been giving continuous persistent yields. The kids has been squatting here by the strawberry bed, picking the wild strawberries which grow here basically every morning. The fruit bushes propagation area is doing great. Most of the honeyberries are done fruiting now, and I even did a small trim on the lower branches. There are some leftover fruit, but most of them was picked yesterday or a few days ago. And then we have more ground cover wild strawberries here with more fruit with a slug. The black currants have set nice fruit, still away from ripening. But the red currants, those are some propagated bushes. You can see that they're starting to turn now, so any moment now. And then down here we planted a few experimental rows, not as a special bed, but just a single row. Some cucumbers which will be growing trailing on the ground, so this is why this area is empty. And some French beans or green beans for picking for salad. This is an experimental bed of sweet potatoes. We mixed old straw with the soil to create more fluffy texture and see what happens. And this is some mix of random varieties of raspberries which came from, I think, Poland, but I'm trying to save them and propagate them. Down here you can see some hazel babies which grew from seed from this hazel. The kids planted the seeds last year, so I'm very happy to see those growing. Up here in the orchard, not much is happening because most of the fruit trees won't have any fruit on them. We've had fruit failures on most of the trees for various reasons, on which I won't detail any further today. But the mulberries, which are on the fence line, one of the largest trees around, have very decent fruit set, and we're hoping for a good harvest in maybe 3 or 4 weeks, by the end of the month, certainly. The fruit bushes have been heavily hit by the blister aphids, so I didn't manage to find time to spray them with a neem and soap solution and just allow them to grow. But even though they seem to be blistered all over, they managed to produce very nice growth. This white currant has over 50 centimeter new shoots, even though it was planted here last autumn. And then the red currants will be ready to harvest in a couple of weeks, and then the black currants in a couple more weeks. The apples have just a very tiny amount, maybe a dozen apples a tree. The pears, no pears at all. The cherries, they have maybe 20% of the fruit they had last year. The white cherry has a bit more, but overall very few. And the peach, which I didn't had time to treat in early spring before leafing out, is now recovering from the leaf curl, and it has set so many fruit that even though I thinned over 100 peaches, I have to come in and thin maybe 100 more, because there's no way such a small tree can bear all of that fruit and live to tell the story. And in the upper part, the June berries are starting to slightly turn color, and I'm excited to have a harvest of those, more than a couple of berries in the coming weeks. I'm hoping that maybe that will happen before the end of the month. And this is our gooseberry, Hinnomaki Rouge, which it has plenty of fruit and lots of new growth. All of those honeyberries, besides 2 bushes, have been picked clean, and you can see that some of them, such as this Boreal Beauty, I think, it grew over 1 meter tall shoots here just from mid-April, so epic growth. And as comparison, see how tall and slender this one grows, and how low and downwards growing is this Wojtek. I'm trying to make that one go upwards as well, and after it has finished fruiting, which it still hasn't, there are lots of berries which are not fully ripe on this Wojtek yet, because it's our latest growing variety. After it finishes fruiting, I'll be cutting it and trimming some of the bottom growth to induce a more upward growing habitus. This is the ideal shape at which I'm looking at. Single or multi-stem, but upward funnel shape. So down here is clear and easy for weeding, and hard for snails and slugs to hide. And upwards it will kind of hide the concrete retaining wall, and it will be easier to pick as well. I have a lot more to show you, but let's cut this short and finish with our small, I'd say, micro greenhouse. All of the plant starts from here has been planted out, and some of the leftover lettuces will be harvested in the matter of weeks, maybe 1 or 2 weeks at the most, for the final salads. And it has been planted with what will be growing over the summer. Of course, this is all new to us because none of us has any experience with greenhouse growing. So we just decided to try and experiment with different techniques. We planted 5 very different varieties of tomatoes with very different vigor and speed of growth. And then a type of hybrid cucumber which already has fruit set. Then some old varieties of cucumbers and one of our seed-saved cucumbers. Some aubergines with or eggplant which otherwise produce no fruit in our garden because our nights even in high summer can be as low as 10 degrees Celsius. And here we planted some bush type dwarf tomatoes which are now starting to flower for their very early fruit, and we're hoping for fruit before the end of the month, which will be a first for us because usually we start picking fruit not in July but in August. And also we planted some peppers and a few basil plants as well, just to see how everything performs in such conditions. And everything has been freshly mulched today with some semi-dry mold grass, and the pathway is wood chips. So that was all for today, folks, and I'll see you in the next one.